Have you ever found yourself wondering why something that once offered comfort and even a sense of joy now feels mechanical or disconnected? What if I were to tell you that a private act, something you've done for decades, might now be quietly working against you? It could be subtly harming your sensitivity, your prostate, and even your confidence as a man navigating his 60s and beyond. This is a topic most older men never hear about from their doctors, but I'm here to change that conversation. I'm Dr. Edward Langley, a specialist in men's health with over 3 decades of experience. I've helped men work through the very real challenges that come with aging, things like circulation issues, hormonal shifts, intimacy concerns, and yes, what happens when you're by yourself. Here is a difficult truth that most men don't ever stop to consider. It's not just that masturbation's benefits might change with age, but how you do it needs to change as well. The very same methods that work for you in your 30s could now be leading to numbness, frustration, or even creating long-term issues in your 60s and 70s. That's why, in our time together today, I want to walk you through the 7 most common mistakes I see older men make when it comes to self-pleasure. These are habits that can quietly chip away at your physical sensitivity, your confidence, and your overall sense of well-being. More importantly, I'll explain how to correct each one with simple, science-based adjustments that can help you rediscover your natural rhythm, pleasure, and sense of control. I truly encourage you to stay with me until the end, because the 6th mistake is the one I find most concerning, and it costs thousands of older men their peace of mind every single day. Let's begin. The first and perhaps most misunderstood mistake I see in men over 60 is one that's been fed by myths, online rumors, and a great deal of quiet confusion. It's the notion that holding back from ejaculation will somehow make you stronger, more masculine, or more youthful. As you'll soon understand, the reality is far more nuanced and much more critical to your health than you might realize. Let me share a story I hear more often than you'd think. An older gentleman, usually in his mid-60s or 70s, will be sitting in my office, and he'll lean forward and say quietly, "Dr. Langley, I've been holding it in. I read that it helps keep your energy levels up. Am I doing the right thing?" Each time, I take a moment and look him in the eye, and with all the compassion and honesty I can, I tell him, "No, my friend. You're not helping your body. In fact, you may be putting it under a good deal of unnecessary strain." This myth, this idea that retaining semen will boost your testosterone or supercharge your vitality, has been circulating for a very long time. The internet has recently given it a new surge of life. But here is the plain truth. What may feel like discipline on the outside could be quietly disrupting your physical and emotional balance on the inside. Your body wasn't designed to hoard semen as if it were some hidden source of power. It was designed for flow, for rhythm, and for release. When you withhold for too long, especially at this stage of your life, you might start to experience things that many men simply attribute to getting older.
A lingering pressure in your pelvis.
Mood swings you can't quite seem to pin down. A kind of restlessness that even a good night's sleep can't fix. These aren't just coincidences, they are consequences. From a physiological standpoint, prolonged retention can lead to what's known as pelvic congestion. This is a condition where blood and other fluids build up in your lower region, causing discomfort, tension, and in some cases, even increasing your risk for prostate issues. You can think of it like a pool of stagnant water. It isn't dangerous at first, but if you leave it untouched long enough, problems can begin to develop. Now, I want to be perfectly clear. This does not mean that frequent, compulsive release is the answer either. The objective here is to find a sense of balance, not to swing between excess and suppression. It's about finding a healthy rhythm that aligns with your body's evolving needs. When you release mindfully, perhaps once or twice a week, you're not losing vital energy. You are supporting healthy circulation. You are helping to keep the prostate functioning well and keeping your nervous system regulated. You are, in essence, helping your body to breathe. I have seen it in my own patients. Men who stop punishing themselves with guilt and begin to listen to their bodies often find that they sleep better, think more clearly, and feel emotionally lighter. This isn't because of some magic pill, but because of basic biology. There's another aspect to this as well. Many men who buy into the semen retention myth aren't just hoping for more testosterone. They are trying to feel a sense of control. They want to believe they can still command their bodies through sheer force of will. But real strength at this point in your life doesn't come from restriction. It comes from wisdom, from understanding what serves you and what doesn't. You are not weak for needing release. You are not being self-indulgent for wanting to feel alive.
You are simply human.
When it's approached with self-respect, release is not a loss, but a gift. It's a reset, a moment of alignment between your body and your mind. So, if you've been clenching your jaw and holding back, thinking you're accumulating some kind of power, I'd encourage you to ask yourself, has this truly helped me? Or have I just been carrying around a tension that no one ever gave me the permission to let go of? Please, let this be that permission. Speaking of deeply ingrained habits, there's another common pattern I see that robs men of their sensitivity without them ever realizing it. It's something most men have been doing the exact same way since they were teenagers, and it may be quietly training your body to feel less, not more. Let's discuss that now. Over the years, I've had countless conversations with men, good and honest men, who tell me something along these lines: Dr. Langley, I just don't know what's happening. I used to feel everything, but now it seems like my body just doesn't respond like it once did. It takes much longer, or worse, sometimes it feels like nothing at all. I truly understand that confusion, because no one ever taught us that your nervous system, that intricate highway of sensation running through your body, doesn't just react to touch, it adapts to it. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say that for decades, you've used the same hand, the same grip, the same pressure, and the same rhythm. It became familiar, automatic, even comforting. And for many years, it probably worked just fine. But over time, your body has quietly conditioned itself to respond only to that one specific kind of stimulation. As a result, anything else, whether it's the touch of a partner, a lighter caress, or an emotional connection, suddenly feels foreign, dull, or even frustrating. That isn't a sign of aging, that's conditioning. Think of it like this: if you only ever did one exercise at the gym, like bicep curls, you'd end up with strong arms but a weak everything else. Your body wouldn't be in balance. It wouldn't grow. The very same thing happens with sexual sensation. When you only stimulate the same neural pathways over and over again, the rest of your body's pleasure map begins to go dormant. Not because it's broken, but because it hasn't been used in years. The wonderful news is that you can retrain your body. You can wake those nerves back up, and you don't need anything complicated to do it. I often suggest my patients start with small changes.
TRY-Switching-Hans.
Change your grip to something softer or slower, even if it feels a bit awkward at first. Explore different rhythms. Try new positions, perhaps standing or lying on your side. You could even try using your non-dominant hand. You're not abandoning what has worked in the past, you're simply expanding what is possible. And yes, it is going to feel unfamiliar in the beginning. That's perfectly normal. Growth always feels that way. But as you continue, your body will start to respond in new and surprising ways.
Sensation will return.
Your awareness will sharpen. Even your connection with your own mind will deepen, because you're no longer just chasing a release. You're actively engaging with yourself. I remember one patient, a man in his late 60s, who came back to see me 6 weeks after making just one simple change. He had switched hands and deliberately slowed himself down. And do you know what he told me? He said, "For the first time in years, I didn't just feel relief. I felt alive." That is the power of being present. That is the power of variation. This isn't about seeking novelty just for the sake of it. It's about keeping your nervous system awake, responsive, and in sync with the man you are today, not the man you were 30 years ago. You're not trying to turn back the clock, you're learning how to make today truly count. And the more you allow yourself to evolve, the more your body will reward you with sensation, connection, and yes, pleasure that actually feels meaningful again. Now, here is something that most men never give a second thought to, but it's quietly diminishing their experience day after day. It isn't about technique, it's about time. Because if you are rushing the process, you may be missing out on the most powerful sensations your body still has to offer.
Let me explain.
I can still recall a patient named Robert, a 68-year-old man who sat in my office and confessed, "Dr. Langley, I don't even know why I bother anymore. It's over before I feel much of anything. It feels more like checking a box than actually being present." And he is far from alone. This is something I hear more often than you might imagine. Many men over 60 are unknowingly trapped in a pattern that likely began when they were 15 years old, rushing through the act, trying to finish as quickly as possible. Back then, it made sense. Maybe it was for privacy, or perhaps it was rooted in feelings of guilt. It could have just been a habit. But now, decades later, that same instinct to hurry has become a quiet thief, stealing not just sensation, but also the emotional richness that this part of life is meant to provide. The problem with rushing is that it transforms something that should be intimate into something that feels mechanical. It becomes less about connection and more about completion. Your nervous system barely has time to fully engage. Your arousal doesn't have a chance to build properly.
Your mind can't settle into the moment.
And so, what could have been a fulfilling experience ends up feeling hollow, almost like a task you have to perform. That feeling of being finished but not truly satisfied, that's not because your body is failing you. It's because you haven't given it the time it now requires to respond fully. As we get older, our bodies change. Blood flow naturally slows, and sensation may take longer to build. But the capacity for pleasure doesn't disappear. It just asks for a bit more attention. The truth is, slowing down isn't about dragging things out unnecessarily. It's about giving yourself permission to fully arrive in the moment. I often tell my patients to think of it like this: you wouldn't rush through a delicious meal. You wouldn't fast forward through your favorite song. So why would you hurry through something as personal and meaningful as connecting with your own body? You can start with your breath. Taking deep, steady breaths is one of the quickest ways to get back in touch with your body. Try to let go of the need to reach a climax and simply explore sensation without any pressure. Use a light, intentional touch, a slower rhythm, and maybe even pause every now and then just to feel what's really happening inside of you. You might be surprised by how much more your body gives back when you stop demanding and start listening. I had a gentleman in his early 70s who began adding just 5 extra minutes to his private routine. He had no goal other than to be present. 2 weeks later, he told me it felt like a part of him had come back to life. It wasn't because of some miracle supplement or a new medical device, but simply because he gave himself the gift of time. And through that, he found a renewed sense of clarity, confidence, and a deeper kind of satisfaction he hadn't experienced in years. The lesson here is simple: if you treat this time as if it matters, it will start to matter again. Now, even when men do begin to slow down, many still make one quiet mistake. They tend to focus only on one part of their body, completely overlooking other areas that could dramatically expand their experience. There is a whole world of sensation just waiting to be rediscovered, and most men don't even know it exists.
Let me show you what I mean.
There was a moment in my career that I will never forget. A man in his 70s, a very soft-spoken gentleman, came to see me not because of any urgent problem, but because, as he put it, something was missing. His words have stuck with me ever since. He said, "It's like all the feeling has drained out of me, not just physically, but emotionally too." We talked for a while, and eventually, I asked him a question that most men have never been asked in their entire lives. When was the last time you touched yourself somewhere other than your genitals? Not just during intimacy, but at all. He looked at me for a moment, a bit confused, and finally replied, "I don't think I ever have." That silence, that long pause, it said everything. For most men, self-pleasure becomes a very narrow act. It's one motion, one goal, and one part of the body. We were taught from a young age that anything outside of that specific act was unnecessary, or maybe even shameful. So, we learned to limit ourselves. We shrank the entire experience down to 1 square inch of skin and forgot that we are living in a body that is filled with nerve endings, with memory, and with energy. But here is a truth I've seen confirmed again and again in my patients, and in my own life as well. The rest of your body is not a distraction, it's a doorway. Your inner thighs, your chest, your lower abdomen, your neck, your shoulders, even the soles of your feet, are rich with sensation that can reignite what you thought was long gone. And one of the most powerful, yet often ignored, areas is the perineum. That's the sensitive space located between the testicles and the anus. Applying gentle pressure or warmth there can send signals up through your entire pelvic floor and trigger a kind of arousal that feels deeper, more grounded, and more whole. When you begin to include more of your body in this experience, something fundamental shifts. You stop treating pleasure like a task you have to complete and begin to experience it as a form of connection. Your nervous system awakens in new places. Your breathing naturally slows. Your heart rate aligns with the moment. You begin to feel sensation not just in one spot, but throughout your entire body. Touching your chest as you breathe, holding your stomach as sensation builds, or running your fingers along your thighs. These are not self-indulgent acts. They are acts of self-awareness, of presence, and of healing. And the most beautiful part of this process is that you start to feel emotionally alive again, because you're not just stimulating a nerve, you're remembering what it feels like to be whole, to be curious, and to be comfortable in your own skin. I once had a retired firefighter tell me, after he tried full-body touch for the very first time, "Doc, I didn't just feel better. I felt human again." That's what happens when you stop isolating pleasure to one small part of yourself and begin to invite the rest of your body back into the conversation. But even with this expanded awareness, there's something else that often gets overlooked, and it's much more practical. It's something so simple, so obvious, that most men don't even consider it. Yet, avoiding it could be reducing your sensitivity and making the entire experience feel far less satisfying than it should. I'm talking about lubrication, and why it's not just helpful, it's essential.
Let me explain.
This is one of those topics that can make a lot of older men shift uncomfortably in their seats. Not because it's embarrassing to talk about, but because they never realized how much it truly mattered. For years, lubrication has been seen as something optional, or worse, as something that only other people use. But I can tell you from decades of experience, avoiding lubrication is one of the quietest ways that men in their 60s and beyond dull their own pleasure and damage their skin sensitivity without even knowing it.
Let me paint a clearer picture for you.
As we age, the natural moisture levels in our skin decline. The nerve endings around the genitals, which are already working harder to maintain sensation, don't respond in the same way they used to. When you add dry skin and friction to that equation, you have a perfect recipe for irritation, microscopic tears in the skin, and a slow erosion of pleasure over time. You might not feel it happening in the moment. Maybe there's just a little bit of discomfort, a slight burning sensation, or a subtle numbness afterward. Most men tend to ignore it, chalk it up to getting older, and just move on. But what they're not seeing is the long-term effect: decreased sensitivity, increased skin resistance, and eventually, a dulling of what once felt so vivid and alive. And here's the frustrating part: this is so incredibly easy to fix. Using lubrication isn't a crutch. It's not a sign that you're losing your edge. It's a sign that you're wise enough to adapt to your body's needs. Just like wearing reading glasses doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're taking care of something that matters to you. Lubrication helps to reduce friction. It allows for a smoother, more natural motion. It brings back a sense of comfort and fluidity to the experience. And for many men, it actually helps to wake up nerve endings that have gone quiet after years of either overstimulation or dryness. I've had men tell me they hadn't felt that kind of intensity in years until they used a lubricant for the first time in decades. It's not just about making things more comfortable, it's about restoring sensation and giving your body what it needs to feel good again. And it goes beyond just comfort. For men who might be dealing with arthritis, hand tremors, or reduced grip strength, lubrication also makes the entire experience easier, more manageable, and less physically straining. You're no longer fighting against friction, you're flowing with your body. I always recommend using a high-quality, skin-safe lubricant, something that supports your natural rhythm and doesn't dry out too quickly. Some men prefer water-based formulas, while others like silicone-based ones for a longer-lasting, silkier feel. It might take a little bit of trial and error to find what works best for you, but once you do, it can completely transform your relationship with touch. This isn't about being fancy. It's about being smart. It's about respecting the changes in your body and making simple adjustments that support your long-term health, sensation, and pleasure. You wouldn't drive an old car without oil in the engine. You wouldn't run dry gears. So why would you treat your own body with anything less than that same care? Now, even when men start to make these practical physical changes, there is still something else that holds many of them back. And it's not physical at all, it's emotional. I can see it in their faces when they try to talk about it. I can hear it in the silence between their words.
It's shame.
A quiet, inherited, and unspoken sense of shame. And it may be doing more damage than any physical habit ever could. Let's talk about that next. There is something I wish more men felt comfortable saying out loud. It's something I've heard uttered quietly behind closed doors, in voices tinged with embarrassment or regret. It usually comes after a long pause in our conversation, when a man in his 60s or 70s finally leans in and asks, "Doc, is it wrong that I still do it?" And every single time, my heart softens, because I know exactly where that question is coming from. Many of us were raised in a time when self-pleasure was simply not discussed. If it was often condemned, ridiculed, or shamed. We were taught that touching yourself was dirty, that desire without a partner was selfish, and that any sexual urge not directed toward procreation was somehow less than worthy. And while we may think we've moved past that old-fashioned messaging, it lingers quietly and deeply within us, especially as we get older. The result is a feeling of guilt after the act, a need to rush through it so that no one finds out, hiding it even from ourselves, and worst of all, feeling like you've somehow failed just for wanting to feel good in your own body. Let me tell you something as plainly as I can. There is nothing shameful about your desire to feel connection, release, or relief.
Tere is noting wrong with seeking comfort in your own hands.
In fact, research has shown that regular mindful self-pleasure can help to improve sleep, reduce anxiety, boost your mood, and even support your heart health as an older adult. But guilt changes the entire chemistry of the experience. It turns something that is inherently healthy into something that feels burdensome. It causes the body to tense up.
It clouds the mind.
It makes you feel as though you're doing something wrong, even when your body is simply asking to be acknowledged, to be touched, and to be cared for. One of the most powerful shifts I have ever seen in my patients is when they stop treating masturbation as a dirty little secret and start treating it as a form of self-care. They begin to see it as a ritual, a way to check in with their body, their stress level, and their energy. I had one man tell me that once he stopped rushing and gave himself emotional permission to be present, he felt calmer, not just during the act itself, but in his daily life. He felt more centered and more in tune with himself. He was no longer just chasing a release. He was honoring his own needs.
And that is the key.
It's not about whether or not you masturbate. It's about how you feel about it. If every time you finish, you are left feeling worse than you did before, then it's not your body that needs fixing. It's the belief system you're carrying around with you. Ask yourself, who told me this was wrong? Was it your family, your religion, a teacher from your childhood? Were those their beliefs, or are they truly yours? And do they still serve you today? Because here is the truth. Pleasure is not just a young man's game. It is a fundamental human need. It belongs to you just as much now, at 65 or 75, as it ever did at 25. In fact, I would argue that you may need it even more now, for grounding, for emotional release, and for a sense of connection in a life that may feel more solitary than it once did. There is no expiration date on your right to feel good in your own skin. The moment you stop hiding, stop apologizing, and start approaching this part of your life with intention and respect, everything begins to change. You begin to feel whole again. Now, even when the guilt begins to fade, many men are still stuck using the same old methods they've relied on for decades, completely unaware that new modern tools now exist that are specifically designed to support their aging bodies. These aren't gimmicks or toys. They are game changers, designed for men in your stage of life. And once you discover what's available, you may wonder why you waited so long to explore them.
Let me show you what I mean.
I remember a conversation I had with a man named Frank, 72 years old, with a sharp mind, a retired engineer. He came into my office with a very straightforward concern. He said, "Doc, I feel disconnected. I still desire intimacy, but my body just isn't responding the way it used to. It's incredibly frustrating. I don't want to take pills, and I don't want any gimmicks. I just want to feel like myself again." What Frank didn't realize, and what so many men his age don't, is that the way we approach self-pleasure at 60, 70, or even beyond, simply cannot be the same way we approached it at 25. The body changes, our sensitivity shifts, joints can get stiff, and grip strength may weaken. And yet, so many men are still using the exact same old technique, expecting to get the exact same results. Here is the honest truth. Your body deserves support. And there are tools available today, modern, practical, and respectful tools, that were specifically designed to enhance your experience without changing who you are. These aren't childish gadgets. They are smart, purpose-built solutions for older men who still want to feel good, but who might need a little bit of help getting there. I'm talking about things like soft, medical-grade silicone sleeves that can mimic the warmth and texture of real skin. I'm talking about devices with ergonomic grips for those who may be dealing with arthritis or a limited range of motion. There are even gentle vibrating massagers designed for the perineum and pelvic floor, areas that can trigger a deep, full-body arousal when they're stimulated properly. For some reason, we have been taught to feel ashamed about using tools, as if needing assistance in any way means that you've somehow failed. But here is the truth that I keep repeating to my patients: adapting isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. You use reading glasses when your vision starts to fade. You wear a supportive shoe when your knees begin to ache. Why wouldn't you offer that same level of care and intelligence to one of the most sensitive and emotionally meaningful parts of your life? When you use tools that are designed with your age and your specific needs in mind, you're not replacing your own touch. You're expanding what's possible. You are reducing the physical effort required, you are improving your comfort, and you are reigniting parts of your nervous system that may have gone quiet, not because they're broken, but because they have been understimulated for years. The results I have seen are truly remarkable. I've had men tell me that for the first time in a decade, they felt completely present again, fully engaged, fully alive, and even joyful. And it wasn't because of some miracle. It was because they stopped expecting their body to behave like it did at 30 and started supporting it for where it is today at 70, with care, with grace, and with the right tools for the job. There is nothing undignified about doing what it takes to feel whole. In fact, I believe it's one of the most dignified things a man can do, because it sends a clear message: I still matter.
My needs still count.
And my body is still worth caring for. But tools and techniques are only part of the story. What truly changes everything, the one thing that makes all of these new habits come alive, is your mindset. If you have ever wondered what it means to truly reclaim this part of your life, not just as a habit or a release, but as a form of connection and healing, then you will want to hear this next part. Because it ties everything we've talked about together in a way that most men never expect.
Let's bring it all home.
If you have made it this far with me, then I want to say something very simple, but very meaningful.
I respect you.
I respect your willingness to listen, to reflect, and to reconsider how you treat yourself, especially in the parts of life that most people never talk about out loud. That kind of openness takes real strength. It takes self-respect. And it's exactly the kind of mindset that leads to profound and lasting change. Over the years, I have worked with thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, and even their 80s, and I've seen one truth emerge again and again. We don't lose our need for intimacy as we age. We just stop giving ourselves permission to feel it. Somewhere along the way, we start to believe that pleasure has an expiration date, that our desires are no longer valid, and that taking time for ourselves somehow makes us weak, selfish, or out of step with the world. But I am here to remind you that nothing could be further from the truth. When we started this conversation, we talked about the 7 common mistakes that older men make when it comes to self-pleasure. And by now, I hope you can see that they weren't really just mistakes. They were habits, quiet patterns that have been passed down through generations of silence, shame, and outdated ways of thinking. We talked about the myth of semen retention and how holding back doesn't actually make you stronger. In fact, it often leaves you feeling tense, irritable, and disconnected. We uncovered how using the same grip and technique for decades can desensitize the body and dull your connection to physical sensation. We looked at how rushing through the experience turns something that could be meaningful into a mechanical act, robbing you of presence and deep satisfaction. We explored what happens when you ignore the rest of your body, and how you might be missing out on a world of sensation and emotional connection that lives beyond one narrow zone. We exposed the quiet damage that is done when lubrication is avoided, and how dryness and friction can steal away both comfort and sensitivity. We faced the deeper emotional weight of shame and guilt, and how they shape not just your experience in the moment, but your entire relationship with your own body. And finally, we acknowledged the power of modern tools, the intelligent, respectful aids that can bring back feeling, ease, and pleasure in a way that works with your aging body, not against it. Each of these changes, these small shifts in your awareness, intention, and technique, isn't about trying to become someone you're not. It's about coming home to who you are right now, today. A man with decades of life behind him, wisdom in his bones, and every right in the world to still feel joy in his own skin. I've had men tell me they feel reborn after making just 1 or 2 of the changes we've discussed. Not because they were chasing after their youth, but because they finally stopped fighting with themselves. They started listening, slowing down, letting go, and treating self-pleasure not as a secret to be hidden, but as a form of self-care. And in doing so, they found their confidence again, a sense of peace, and even a renewed sense of purpose. Because when you reclaim this part of yourself, you don't just improve your private moments. You restore your connection to your entire body, your mood, your energy, and even your sense of identity. You become more present, more grounded, and more in tune with your life. So, wherever you are right now, whether you're feeling unsure, a bit curious, or ready to try something new, I want you to know this: it is never too late to reconnect. It is never too late to feel. And it is never too late to honor the man you are, exactly as you are, with respect, with care, and without apology.
You are not broken.
You are not done. You are simply ready for a better way forward. And it starts right now with you.